Tonight, President Obama goes to Capitol Hill to rally Senate Democrats behind health care reform, while senior citizens worry what proposed Medicare cuts will mean for them. I'm Russ Mitchell. Also tonight, replacing a legend. 4 Massachusetts Democrats are fighting for their party's nomination to fill the late Ted Kennedy's Senate seat. Powering down, Switzerland is challenging its citizens to use 1/6 the energy the typical American family uses. And meet the high school football team with big stars on the field and in the stands.
This is the CBS Evening News with Russ Mitchell.
And good evening. The race to push the $1 trillion health care bill through Congress by Christmas got even more intense this Sunday as President Obama made a trip to Capitol Hill. His mission today was to lobby Democrats and urge them to stand together. But as the debate continues, that strategy is not sitting well with Republicans. Kimberly Dozier has the latest.
President Obama announced they're going to get it done after he met with Senate Democrats on Capitol Hill today. He said he'd come to give them a pep talk as the Senate debated health care in a rare Sunday session. Republicans charged Mr. Obama's visit violated his own campaign pledge to include them.
I'd love for the president to come and meet with the 40 of us who are on this side of the aisle, and we could have a discussion with him.
But this visit was about winning over Democratic opponents to the bill. Democratic leader Harry Reid needs all 60 votes in his caucus, or he'll have to bring some Republicans on board.
We're working toward a consensus. We're not there.
4 of his coalition remain opposed: Joe Lieberman, Ben Nelson, Blanche Lincoln, and Mary Landrieu. Their main objection, the bill's government-run health care plan, known as the public option. A compromise is in the works to launch a national nonprofit health care plan modeled after insurance offered to government employees. It would be federally administered at first, but might be privately run at some later date. It's still being worked on. Another major hurdle involves abortion. One amendment expected to be introduced tomorrow would stop insurers from providing abortion services to any woman who receives federal subsidies to buy insurance. The Republicans aren't having much luck with their amendments. They've tried but failed 3 times so far to strip out the bill's new cuts to Medicare.
Cuts that will reduce benefits for nearly 11 million American seniors on Medicare Advantage. Cuts that raid Medicare instead of fixing it.
Senators who met with the president say he didn't get into details. This was simply one of the last chances in his schedule to meet with his troops and rally them to try to finish health care by Christmas. He leaves for Europe this week to accept the Nobel Peace Prize. Russ?
Kimberly Dozier at the White House. Thank you very much. As Kimberly pointed out, Republicans tried and failed to block cuts to home health care agencies in the Senate bill. Democrats say the cuts would trim projected Medicare spending by some $42 billion. As some homebound Medicare patients watch the debate, they worry they could lose some vital services. Seth Doan has more.
Okay. These days, it's hard for Michael Cordovana to walk and even breathe.
Yeah, great. Okay.
Thankfully, he's just steps from the instrument he loves. At age 80, he's had a stroke, quintuple bypass surgery, and suffers from an inoperable aneurysm. But he's able to stay at home thanks to 2 aids paid for by Medicare.
How important are home health aids?
Oh, it's the difference between life and death.
So Cordovana is closely watching the healthcare debate on Capitol Hill.
You live with the fear that it'll be cut off sometime.
The home health care will be cut? You worry about that?
Oh, yes.
Why?
Because you know how expensive it is.
In an effort to raise funds to insure more Americans, home health care services may take a disproportionate hit. While they currently make up about 4% of Medicare spending, Congress would seek to extract nearly 10% of overall savings from home health care services. While that may seem alarming to some,
unfortunately, this has become very political, and it's an easy way to rile people up.
Marilyn Moon, health policy researcher, says folks who rely on these services should not be worried.
I'm confident that these kinds of changes can lead to greater efficiencies without harming beneficiaries or cutting back on this important benefit.
But agencies which provide home health services worry the cuts would hurt.
A healthcare reform bill that includes significant cuts is very troubling because what it means is patients don't get served, services get cut, programs get cut.
Michael Cordovano worries that home care is expensive, but feels you cannot put a price on quality of life. Seth Doan, CBS News, New York.
That's fantastic.
And here's what else is happening this Sunday evening. 2 days after an Italian court convicted American student Amanda Knox of murder, her parents spoke today with Harry Smith of The Early Show, who asked Kurt Knox about their prison cell visit yesterday with their daughter.
You just want to let her know that there's always light at the end of the tunnel and you know, kind of whisper in her ear that it's going to be all right. This is going to get fixed. We're going to get you home, and you got to stay strong, and we're going to move forward from here.
And you can see Harry's interview with the parents of Amanda Knox tomorrow morning on The Early Show. It will be an historic week in Massachusetts as voters go to the polls to begin the process of replacing a legend. Senator Ted Kennedy died in August, and his successor will likely be decided this Tuesday on primary election day. John Dickerson has a preview.
It should be a great race. Ted Kennedy served in the Senate for 47 years, meaning that in the Democratic stronghold of Massachusetts, a vacant Senate seat is as rare as an elected Republican. Paul Kirk is interim senator.
This is a seat of history. Daniel Webster, John Quincy Adams, Charles Sumner, President John Kennedy.
But voters are not hearing the call of history.
This race has been sort of like Gertrude Stein's famous description of Oakland. There's no there there. In fact, there have been polls suggesting that the majority of voters didn't even know there was an election going on next week.
The candidates have been trying to get attention. The frontrunner is Massachusetts Attorney General Martha Coakley, who's been boasting about taking on investment bankers.
She'll fight for tougher oversight of Wall Street.
And not tying herself to the Kennedy legacy. In contrast, Congressman Michael Capuano embraces the former icon.
Ted Kennedy taught me that Washington's a tough town. We have to stand and fight when it really matters.
Alan Casey, a community activist, is trying both, invoking Kennedy.
Alan Casey. He's been called Teddy's rightful heir.
And bashing Washington.
Because someone's got to clean up the mess in Washington.
The Kennedy family has not endorsed any of the four Democrats, which also includes Celtics co-owner Stephen Pagliuca. Electoral fireworks have been limited because there are few policy differences, and voters are distracted because the primary is sandwiched between Thanksgiving and Christmas.
Just trying to figure out how you're going to get a parking space at the mall is probably consuming more mental energy right now than figuring out who you're going to vote for in the Senate race.
There is a Republican running for Kennedy's seat, so Tuesday's winner will face a challenger in January. But even in Massachusetts, where the Red Sox have taught them to believe in hope over experience, Republicans expect the Democrat to win in a walk. Russ?
John Dickerson in Washington, thank you very much. Secretary of Defense Robert Gates said today that U.S. forces will stay in Afghanistan for at least 2 to 4 years. But on the CBS News broadcast Face the Nation, Gates reaffirmed President Obama's vow to begin an Afghan withdrawal in a year and a half.
The date in July 2011 to begin transferring security responsibility and thinning our troops and bringing them home is firm. What is conditions-based is the pacing at which our troops will come home.
The president also announced last week an additional 30,000 U.S. troops will head to Afghanistan. Of course, in this country, that means more changes on the home front, and not just at home. Terry McCarthy has that story from Camp Pendleton, California.
Mia Wayne has her own way of supporting the war in Afghanistan. She lives in Oceanside, right next to the Marine Corps base of Camp Pendleton. So she invited 2 Marines to Thanksgiving dinner.
They're thankful. They're thankful to have a home-cooked meal.
Oceanside's 170,000 residents are strong backers of the military. Particularly now, some 4,000 more Marines from Camp Pendleton are likely to be deployed to Afghanistan starting this month as part of President Obama's new war strategy.
We have to finish the job. And with 30,000 people more, if that's what it's going to take, okay.
The Marines' job is to support the mission. Our job is to support the Marines.
Everybody here feels it when a big deployment happens.
The town empties out. There's a lot less people here. A lot of women with their husbands gone, so you see, a lot of ladies and children walking around without their dads.
Oceanside is a proud military town, but with 3/4 of the population linked to somebody who is or was serving in the armed forces, they know better than anyone how much this war really costs.
Are you handsome?
Dawn O'Brien has a son, son-in-law, and daughter-in-law in the military.
That's Dan.
As a mother, she says every day of their deployments is torture.
Constant fear. Constant 24-hour fear.
O'Brien thinks the repeated deployments have pushed military families to the breaking point.
Some of them have gone 2, 3, 4, some are even on their 5th tour, and it's just too much.
Back in Mary's Diner, retired teacher Marilyn Pircola sees no easy way out of this war.
It causes one to ponder. And I would say even pray, you know. I pray for our soldiers at war.
A war that in Oceanside is constantly part of everyday life. Terry McCarthy, CBS News, Oceanside, California.
And still ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, how low can they go? The Swiss try to drastically cut their energy use. On the eve of the historic climate change summit in Copenhagen, a train called the Climate Express rolled into the Danish capital from Brussels tonight, carrying environmentalists and journalists. Also, the city of Zurich in Switzerland has a creative solution to climate change, as we hear from Elizabeth Palmer.
Zurich, Switzerland's largest city, has a radical goal: to reduce the amount of energy its residents use by 2/3 and become a 2,000-watt society. That is 2,000 watts every second of every hour, every day.
If you take the total amount of energy being consumed on Earth and you divide it by the number of people, it works out to roughly 2,000 watts per person. That's the amount of energy it would take to keep 20 100-watt light bulbs burning. But how many of us are using more than our share?
Top of the list are Americans, who use 12,000 watts each. Europeans use about half that much. Africans and Bangladeshis less than 700. So can each member of a modern Swiss family really live on the same energy it takes to power 20 light bulbs? Martina Blum, an environmental economist, decided to try in a custom-built house with a ventilation system that recycles all warmth, including body heat.
There's this heat exchange where the incoming air is warmed up.
Features like that are expensive, but Swiss banks offer lower mortgages for energy-efficient homes. To conserve even more energy, the family also eats locally produced food. Still,
your goal is 2,000 watts. How close are you?
We are around 3,500.
Not quite down to 2,000 watts, but well on the way with no loss of comfort.
The 2,000-watt society is not what some people criticize. They say, well, it's cold, it's uncomfortable, it's no fun. And this is not true.
Swiss cities are investing serious public money in the 2,000-watt vision, making trains and trams easier and cheaper than cars, and encouraging people to cycle or walk. The effort is paying off.
In cities like Basel and Zurich, about 40% of the households don't even own a car.
Anna and Bernd Roschewitz certainly don't, and they recently decided to renovate their 1960s home to a 2,000-watt standard.
And it's proven technology. Maybe the combination here or the target we set is a bit ambitious, but it's not really, we are not even pioneers anymore.
Maybe not pioneers, but the Swiss are trailblazers, showing the world a 2,000-watt future can look very bright. Elizabeth Palmer, CBS News, Zurich.
And just ahead on tonight's CBS Evening News, she's a Nobel Prize-winning scientist, and this previous winner helped shine the lights on her accomplishments. When the Nobel Prize in Medicine is awarded in Sweden this coming Thursday, 2 of the 3 Americans sharing the prize will be women. And one of those women will have an earlier Nobel winner to thank, at least in part, for helping to make the moment possible. Kelly Wallace has more.
When Carol Greider, a researcher at Johns Hopkins University, learned she won the Nobel Prize in Science, the first thing she did was tell her kids.
Well, I had to wake them up because it was very early, and they were just very excited.
Only 8 women have been awarded a Nobel in Science since 1901.
I've been getting messages from all over the world of people saying how exciting it is, not just for me, but for the whole field.
Miles away in New York, neuroscientist Paul Greengard, who helped bring international attention to Grider's work last year, felt like a proud father.
Because this is very explicitly one of our goals, to help women win a Nobel Prize. And I never dreamed it would come so soon.
9 years ago, Greengard himself won the Nobel Prize. The award triggered memories of the day when he was 20 and was told something shocking, that his mother, named Pearl Meister, died while giving birth to him. Every trace of her had been destroyed, not even a photo remained.
62 years later, it's still as raw as ever.
Amazing how it hangs in there, you know? I can't get over it.
To honor the mother he never knew, Greengard took his Nobel Prize money, $400,000, and established the prestigious Pearl Meister Greengard Award.
To come to the podium to receive the Pearl Meister Greengard Award.
A science prize for women of high accomplishment. Last year, Carol Grider herself won the award. She believes it encourages women to overcome the sometimes subtle barriers to the top.
I don't think that there has to be overt, we're going to ignore Jill, but rather just, I'm just not so comfortable bringing her into the group.
Greengard is motivated by the hundreds of letters from women scientists who say they've faced discrimination, but more personally, he's forging a link to his mother.
To set up some kind of prize in honor of my mother, it made her more realistic for me.
And it also helped women scientists like Carol Grider get the recognition they deserve. Kelly Wallace, CBS News, New York.
The city of Lyon in France switched on its Festival of Lights this weekend, and what a sight. Colorful lights and images are projected onto buildings throughout the city. Millions of visitors are expected. And finally this evening, after winning a playoff game this weekend, California's Oaks Christian High School football team is one win away from playing for the state championship. And for 3 of the team's stars, success runs in the family. Here's Bill Whitaker.
Friday nights across the country, cheerleaders take the field, fans pack the stands, lights come up, and the game begins. But the gridiron at Oaks Christian High School in suburban LA has extra red carpet appeal. The team has a quarterback named Montana and a backup quarterback named Gretzky, offspring of some of the greatest athletes in American history, but you'd never know it to talk to them.
Out on the practice field with my teammates, everything's even. We're just a bunch of kids having fun and playing football.
You know, a lot of the kids, I don't think, remember who Joe Montana was, which we remind Joe all the time, you know, and so we do the same thing with Wayne Gretzky.
If the teenagers don't remember them from their highlight reels, they do recognize them in the stands, regular fixtures at their sons' games, trying to blend in with parents who don't have Super Bowl rings and Stanley Cups.
He's pretty low-key. He doesn't like the attention and all that stuff. He just wants to come watch me play.
The talent might be genetic, but their parents say the drive is self-imposed.
I don't think he feels the pressure of being Wayne Gretzky's son as far as succeeding. I think he puts his own pressure on himself.
They're not just famous, they're good. This 10-year-old football program boasts a stellar record. Just 11 losses, 1 tie, and 120 victories. And this year, as always, they're headed to the playoffs.
This football team is one of the better ones in the 10 years.
If the Montana Gretzky star power isn't blinding enough, check out number 6. He's the son of Will Smith, who can be spotted most Friday nights.
It's really cool, like, knowing he's there and knowing that he's supporting me. He comes to every game, so it really helps.
Unless, of course, Hollywood interferes. On this night, Trey's mom stood in for Will, who's shooting a movie in China.
I think Trey is used to it. His dad is pretty famous, and he's been famous for a long time. Really, ever since Trey was born, Will has been famous.
But on Friday nights, the spotlight is on young stars making their own name on the football field. Bill Whitaker, CBS News, Westlake Village, California.
And that is the CBS Evening News. I'm Russ Mitchell in New York. Katie's here tomorrow. Good night.